All right, cool. Yeah, so thanks for jumping on, and thanks for the suggestion to record. Can first of all, can you hear any background noise? There's some people mowing outside.
No, it sounds good to me. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So I think I we could just jump straight into it. I think that we had a really great conversation last time on Benjamin's live stream, and I
Yeah,
think that we had conversations about like authenticity and how that relates to OP potentially, kind of sussing out like I don't know, like certain, like they feel kind of intangibles, like certain intangibles.
yeah.
um and so I know I kind of suggested we have like a couple of topics, but um yeah, why don't you kind of just jump into it, whatever you're most interested in.
Okay. I guess I wanted to kind of hit on what you just were saying about like the invisible part of it,
Mhm.
and I was thinking about Uzer's last video he did, Jung Buck. Did you see that video?
Yeah.
He was talking about like the primal functions, I suppose I would call it.
Mhm.
I feel like maybe that invisible stuff would be like considered the primal intuition. That was a idea I was throwing around in my head a little bit.
Primal intuition, what would that be?
Kind of like that invisible knowing.
Oh yeah, like kind of just knowing. Yeah,
I was gonna rewatch that video because I don't remember what he settled on for what was more primal, sensing or intuition.
he said sensing. So sensing is kind of the thing that we all kind of do by default by virtue of being in an environment. So it's like, yeah, it's like the five senses. It's like you actually experience the thing. And intuition is like it's the way he kind of described it is it's like it's a shortcut for sensing. It's supposed
Mm-hmm.
to help you sense better things, right? So it's like by simulating in a situation, you don't have to actually experience it, right? Was
Yeah,
kind of the point, right?
and
So yeah.
I was thinking about a video from Jordan Peterson I watched recently that makes me think that it might actually be the other way around, where we are moving around the world and interacting with it through intuition primarily, and it's like when you get into the actual sensory details, that's where it like makes the shortcut. I don't know if it applies to the shortcut part actually, but it's like he kind of like framed it through like people fundamentally see the world through tools and obstacles is what he was saying.
Mhm.
um I guess we can't really, if we just want to take it at a face value what he was saying, he basically kind of like described it like that. So if we're seeing things primarily as tools and obstacles, then that's like the intuitive baseline that we
Mhm.
function as. So when you like come into a classroom and the recycling can is like in the middle of your road, our first base instinct is to see it as an obstacle, not like the sensory thing. But then it again, it's like coming in through your eyes. So I don't know if maybe that would prove it as like sensor first, but it's
Yeah.
like feel like you're not seeing it as a thing. You're going off of the primal intuition first, possibly. That's kind of what I was processing, and I don't know what you if you have any thoughts on that.
Oh yeah, I've thought about this quite a bit. Maps and meaning, I had kind of like an obsessive phase over that.
Mm.
And so I'm actually going to share my screen a little bit, just to kind of support that idea, right? So Peterson has this argument of like things can either be viewed as like scientifically, or they could be viewed narratively. And he
Mm-hmm.
argues that like science is a very new invention, right? Like trying to see things as they are is new, right?
Oh
Animals don't
yeah,
do that. And like humans before the like scientific revolution and the enlightenment period don't do that. We see things in narratives, right? And
yeah.
all narratives are composed of, I mean, this is his basic map of meaning, so think of it as like an actual map of how we see things. We
Mm-hmm.
always see things compared to point A and point B. So there's an ideal future and there's an unbearable present. So to your point, this might be the intuition where it's like we always are imagining a future we want, right? So
Yeah.
like Uzair was talking about like trying, I think, I mean, he has something against museums. I don't know why, but it's like trying to travel and have a good experience. But it's like, there's and then to this one's a little bit blurry, but this map, there's a lot of things that go in the way, right? So it's like, you can, if you're moving towards point B and it's working, then you get positive emotion, so like interest or confidence or things like that.
Yeah.
If there are unexpected obstacles, then you experience like negative emotion, and you either need to update your map completely, or you just need to update your path towards plan B, right? And so to your point, I think that, yeah, I think that intuition is very I was wondering that too. It's like we always see things compared to what we want, right?
Hmm.
It's very rare for us to just enjoy a moment, like, or experience a moment. It's like there's always an anticipation, right? Now, granted, in OP, we're both I think we're both savior intuitive, so there might be a bias there. We
Yeah.
would need to cross check that against savior sensors to confirm. But yeah, I mean, I could see your argument very, yeah. I've definitely thought about that in the past.
Yeah. So I thought maybe that might at least be some kind of a useful idea somewhere to
Yeah.
help explain the invisible instead of keeping it more. I'm just thinking that might help keep it a little bit less woo woo.
Yeah, like primal intuition or whatever.
Yeah. Make it something slightly more grounded.
Yeah. Yeah, the term I'm very indifferent to the term right now, primal versus non. I think the idea makes sense, sure. I mean, maybe it's because I'm Demon SI or SI last. I'm just always a stickler for terms, because it's like,
I know, me too.
yeah, I feel like terms have very specific connotations, and I'm like, all right, like whatever. But yeah, no, I get that. And so to circle back, I mean, this idea that there's something in us that can intuitively grasp things. I mean, this is I don't know, I forgot what term this is in the ancient Greek philosophies. I don't know if it's the nous or the logos. I forgot which one.
I'm not familiar
But
with those terms.
yeah, it's one of those two, where it's like that was the original understanding of the term intellect or intelligible, where it's
Oh,
like
okay.
it's an immediate understanding, right? Like
Yeah.
another terminology or another framework for this is like not Japanese, but definitely Eastern philosophical koans, right? If you're familiar with like these Buddhist koans, so there are these sayings or these phrases, right? So it's like, what's a one-armed clap or something like that, like some weird phrase
Yeah.
on your path to enlightenment. Like, so these Buddhist mentors would kind of tell these little parables or these little riddles to people,
Yeah.
and the solution to them was not into it wasn't logical. It was this immediate, like, you made a sound or you made a movement, or like you point at something, and it's this immediate grasping of, oh shit, I get it. It's almost like an aha moment
Yeah.
embodied, right? And
And
so yeah.
I watched Dr. K's deep dive into intuition, which is like one of his member videos, so it's hard to like get access to.
Yeah, it's fine.
But he takes it from the Eastern perspective as well, and it kind of aligns with what you were saying. And it's like comes from the base idea that understanding happens internally, not externally. And I feel like that's part of maybe why things are more like riddle like. And I don't know if that idea makes sense to you, that like understanding and like the clicking, thinking, thinker connection blocks fitting together.
Yeah.
The argument is that it happens internally. Like I can't make that happen for you. I can give you like all the information, and
Yeah.
that's just going to be like information. But when it clicks, that happens internally, and that's like what they would basically call connecting to God through their own words, the Brahman, or
Hmm.
whatever.
Hmm.
And it's like saying that all like understanding or wisdom or like that pure intuition, they kind of like have the idea that that comes from God, and that's you connecting to God, and that's like how that intuition works. And I'm wondering if maybe that's, since Buddhism is fairly close, if that's what's behind their ideas behind like giving those parables and stuff.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, I
It's hard
think
to think about.
it's I mean these ideas are in culture, right? So it's like, yeah, it's like you have the noose, you have the like this notion of Brahmin, like you have the image of God, right? I just have not
Yeah.
thought about these things in a while, but yeah, I think there is something kind of, I don't want to say magical because it's not necessarily that, but it's very mysterious, our capacity to do this, or our capacity to experience this, because it's not something you can explain really.
Yeah, it's
Like,
like it feels like something that you can only experience.
yeah.
And it's like I've been thinking about that a lot, as it's just hard because you can't like reason that with anyone.
Hmm.
There's like no way to like necessarily communicate it, and that's why like when doing meditations and stuff, there's like weird ideas around like being secretive about it or not telling other people, because you screw yourself over apparently, but you also screw them over because you give them expectations, and those expectations get in the way of some of the meditative experiences.
Right.
It's so weird, but it makes sense. So it's like you can't get in
Okay.
someone's way, but you can't give them the understanding. So like, what the hell do you do, kind of thing?
It's kind of hard. I think about this quite a lot when it comes to like trying to share a personal insight with someone. I mean, this is me with Vinland Saga right now. I know I'm like a year late to this fucking show, or like 4 years late, but
Never too late.
it's a very powerful show. But it's one of those things where, when I try and share things with people, it's like yeah, it's like it falls flat. Even though to me, I feel like it's a very direct show. Like I feel like it's more of a parable than like a story. And the
Hmm.
messages are I feel like they're very, very direct about like war and about self-transformation and stuff like that. But it's like I have these conversations with people, and it's like, why did, like, it's like you watched the same thing I did. Like, why didn't you have this like clicking moment as well? You know?
Yeah.
And I was talking to a friend about this, and she was telling me it's like, maybe I was just right. Like I just had the right conditions to receive that.
Hmm.
Right? It's like everything was primed. Like my life up until this moment was like perfectly lined up, or maybe I was just experiencing something that I deeply resonated with. That, like,
I think
it's
priming is a
it's.
part of it.
I think everything was set up for me, and it's like, yeah, it's like, how do you set up the proper conditions for someone to have this aha moment? In a more practical sense. So I mean, I know that's Vinland Saga, and that's kind of my religion right now. But I think even practically, like I work in software engineering, and a lot of times I'm staring at code I don't understand,
Yeah.
right? And it's my brain, it's like I'm staring at it and I'm trying to figure it out, and it's like nothing's clicking. And then one day, whether it's a conversation with someone, or I looked at it a different way that day or whatever, it's like everything like lines up, and it's like, all right, I can move forward now.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Have you
yeah, it's
have
like,
you heard that that's like a common thing for like a lot of people that are problem solving, like stepping away and then you get like the aha moment?
yeah,
Have you?
yeah, like very like, yeah, I've heard it as like you're handing it off to your unconscious, right? Like a relaxed, like you have to be in a relaxed state to kind of really
Yeah.
process these things. Um, but yeah, it's like I wish I could do it on command. I really wish.
Yeah. It's
Um,
like it just
yeah.
seems like something that can't be forced, and I guess I wonder if it's like a mindset sort of thing. Um, so it's like the flow state is a state of mind, and sleep is a state of mind. Like, I don't know if you've heard this before, but I was going on and on about this a few months ago because I find it so interesting that sleep is not something you can do. It's not something you do. Sleep is a state of mind, and all you can do is things that help promote or move yourself to that state of mind faster, or like give it a better chance to move into that state of mind.
Okay. I think I'm gonna need you to elaborate on that, because I've been I've been treating it like the opposite. I've been treating it like sleep is an activity. Now I'm sleep last, so I could be completely wrong.
I'm talking
But
about like physical sleep.
oh, physical sleep. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like you have to set up the conditions for it. But it's like, yeah, it's like you can't force yourself. Well, I've heard some people who can, but I can't. I can't force myself to fall asleep.
I can by looking at my screen of code just like you, except for instead of like just staring at it and try to figure it out, I just go to sleep.
Nice. Nice. Um yeah, no, I think that's a great analogy where it's like, yeah, it's like you can't because it's not a process controlled by the conscious mind. It's a process
Yeah.
controlled by the body. If
So when
you
you're trying to do it, it's like antithetical to what you're trying to do because the state of mind that involves trying isn't the state of mind you need to be in to do it. It
yeah,
sucks.
yeah. Um yeah, I don't I feel like I've exhausted my I don't know if I could say more on the topic, but
I can.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, so go for it.
I feel like some of what you're touching on kind of involves like the third point I wrote down about talking points, about like
Uh,
the last part of it, which was
yeah, like talking without like an immediate result necessarily, like
yeah,
or a direct
that or
outcome.
like how do we find meaning and like conversations of less significance? And that's like how I'm viewing. That's like when I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about that conversation you were talking about where you want to like have this deep conversation of what you're getting out of this show, and the other
Yeah.
people just aren't in that same mindset and just aren't there for it. Like that sucks. Like especially for me being play last, I would blame it on that. That just is like one of the most sucky, awkward conversations because I just want to do and
Yeah.
process that one thing, and like I'm finally here with someone, and I want them to be in it with me, and they're just like, "Nah, I'm not following," and then I'm just like, "Wow, this really sucks. This is kind
Yeah.
of painful." Um, I don't know if it's more painful for you because then you can't like play it out.
It's I mean, for me it's like the image that comes to my mind is like you're trying like it's a maze, but you don't know where the entrance is. So it's like you're in the maze. Let me okay, this
Mhm.
analogy might break down, but I've already navigated my way into this experience that I'm trying to share with someone, right?
Yeah,
And but the problem is when I present it to them, I have no idea. It's like we're trying to mess with it blind. So it's like I have no idea what's hitting you or what's not hitting you, and
like
whether you have any experience in this, right? So
yeah,
for me to answer your question, it's like yeah, after a while, if I can sense that there's no way in, if that makes sense, then I just give up. I'm just like, all right, whatever. Like we could talk about something else, right? Because I think the benefit for being sleep last is that I have so much that I need to process that I don't want to process alone. That it's like I have like almost I don't want to say endless talking points, but I feel like it's virtually endless.
yeah. I have a word for that endless thing. Kind of. I call it the pool. Do you
Okay,
call it the pool?
I
So
don't know. Okay, go ahead.
it's like I call it the pool. I have like different topics, and I like have some people in mind I might want to talk about them too, but it's like not the right time or they're not around. So the idea goes in the pool so I don't forget it, and it marinates. And when it's time, I fish it out of the pool. It's
Yeah,
like all of the NE. There's like an NE pool, and that's like what I describe that like pool, that like thing you can just pull out of whenever you need to, whenever you want to.
yeah. My that's actually very interesting. I think I have like a pool of one thing,
Yeah.
like which is Vinland Saga. Like, that's really about it. Like, or oh no, that's not true. Like Vinland Saga,
And
like
then here comes the
OP,
connections. Yeah.
yeah, like OP and sleep. That's always kind of a doozy trying to process that.
And it's like when you have like a new idea on one of those, it goes in the pool, is how I feel it works for me. We're
Okay,
both masculine intuitive, right?
no, I'm feminine intuition.
Well, that's a good point of reference then, because I don't think I've talked about like this idea to like about the pool to like someone with a feminine NE.
Yeah, no, it
But
makes
yeah, and it's like almost seems applicable to SE as well, except for their pool is like different. It's like my INTJ friend Chris, who was on the joining the Thursday streams.
mhm.
It's like it drives me nuts how he does it, but he like goes through YouTube and he like sees a video or like a channel he's interested in checking out, so he just subscribes to it. And it
Okay.
like goes in his like SE subscription list of like
Right,
his like bucket of sensory to go back to, and I'm like, why would you do that? It just
right,
doesn't make sense
right.
to me. But I want to bring this up maybe today on the Thursday stream and ask Ben about it, of like this pool idea of like the
Yeah, you have
bucket that's
this.
pulling out of the NE or SE.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think I get the idea. I think I experience it similarly, where it's like I have like,
And
yeah, there's certain topics for me. It's like there's certain topics that's like I really wish I could talk to people about it, but it's like it just lays dormant. That's how I would describe it. It's just laying dormant
laying
until
on
the
the side
time.
of the pool.
Sure, maybe, but
Because I'm
it's.
wondering if like the marinating is like a sleep processing analogy.
I think the marinating is, yeah, like where like you're not refining necessarily, but you're kind of drilling on the idea. This is something that I'm forcing myself to do. So one thing that I'm doing every morning. So I watched Vinland Saga. Like it's kind of crazy because I've been looking at my journal entries. Like Vinland Saga like changed my life in like 2 weeks. It's kind of fucking weird. Like because I'm looking at my journal entries 2 weeks ago, and like I was not processing any of what I was processing now, right? And
Yeah,
so for me, the fear is that because this was so rapid, it might leave just as rapidly. And so what I've been doing is I've been spending like 5 to 10 minutes every morning journaling about like things in Vinland Saga, right? So whether
yeah,
it's the motifs of like paradise on earth or this notion of being haunted by your like the sins of your past, right?
yeah.
And like what that means. Um, or just even the writing process itself, because like I said, it's a very direct show as opposed to something like One Piece, which is people claim is very deep as a show, but like I feel
Hmm.
like it's too distracting, like by its aesthetic and by its story being like so fun. And
I totally get it.
so I think that like every morning that's how that's my baby marination is, I guess I'll call it. It's like I'm starting to marinate on it. Like I'm forcing myself to marinate on it so I don't
Yeah,
forget it,
it
right?
sounds like what I've learned recently about like some of the ideas on how we build our understanding or like how we learn something. It's like you got to have some information, and then you got to start like being able to manipulate the information, and you got to like play with the information and try to like rephrase the information. And
Mhm.
once you do like all those sort of things, that's like what seems to be the mechanism behind actually like learning and processing. And I think
Yeah.
that's how you hold on to it. So I think what you're doing sounds like a great way to like kind of carry on those ideas.
Yeah. I hope so, because it's like I know these ideas are so powerful, but especially because I have like feminine intuition, it's like I know I could forget them at a moment's notice, right? So it's
Hmm.
like I'm like it's like so even in the show, like it's so fascinating because even in the show, it's almost like it's telling you. It's like there's this poem, like in the show at the beginning and the end of the second season called Carve, and it's like carve all of your understanding into everything, like carve it into the earth, carve it into your activities, carve it into your body, right? Carve it into the sea, carve it into your enemies. Like it gets a little bit kind of crazy, but it's like
Yeah.
you need to physically like write this in, like you have to like write all of these lessons into what you do, because otherwise you're gonna forget. And I think that that's how, I would say that's how my masculine sensory and my masculine demons work, is that it's like I need to like force it into memory, right?
Hmm.
Because otherwise I'm not gonna remember. So yeah.
Yeah,
And this,
I think that definitely makes sense for you.
yeah.
There's so many things in the pool right now. I don't know which one I want to pull out.
Yeah, so let's quickly, because I do have a hard stop in about like half an hour. So
Yes, I'm
I
aware.
I think that so I mean
Because
you proposed three topics.
Yeah, and I feel like one thing in the pool might lead to the first one,
Oh,
and
sure.
that was like your rewatching the Thursday stream, you were processing the idea of like Thorfinn and can someone actually change like that in like real life?
Yeah.
Have you
I've
done any more processing
I
on that?
have actually. Yeah, I have in the past few days. I think so. Okay, good question. So there's this notion of identity and character in OP, right?
Yeah,
Where they talk about DI as if it's this thing, right? It's like choose your identity or change your identity and stuff like that. I was initially processing this whole Thorfinn journey and this experience of mine as, oh, my character has changed and his character has changed, right? He describes himself as being reborn, right?
yeah,
But recently, so I lurk on the Facebook groups, the OP Facebook groups, I mean, daily, basically.
yeah,
But there was an interesting question that arose to DI deciders, so IPs.
yeah,
And they were asking, the person was asking, like, what's your relationship with identity? Like, how do you like what does that mean to you? And like a vast majority of the IPs were confused by the question. They were like, I don't like I am who I am. It's like I don't change. I could change my behavior, I could change maybe my values, I could change anything, but I am who I am. It's not like I changed, right? And so
hmm,
there's this underlying core to the person. And so I was thinking about that and I was wondering, like, especially in the case of Thorfinn, it's like, is that true? And I think I actually think the answer is yes. Thorfinn, it's not like Thorfinn became a different person. So in the story arc, it's like Thorfinn was this revenge driven,
yes,
angry boy who wanted to kill this guy. And then
yep,
he becomes a slave. He becomes basically like he doesn't have a will to live anymore, basically. And then he slowly tries to atone for his past sins and become this pacifist and this really gentle but strong-willed spirit, right?
yeah,
When I looked back on the first couple of episodes where Thorfinn's like a child, like before even the revenge arc,
yeah,
I noticed there were two potentialities in him. There was the like he did have a capacity for violence as a kid, where it's like he's like hitting people and he's just pissed off, right? He had that. But
yeah,
there was also this like childlike wonder, this childlike innocence, this kindness to him that you see in season 2. And so the way that I look at it is it's almost like Thorfinn went down one path of potential for him and then he reversed it and then he went down the other path of potential that he always had,
yeah,
right? And so like when you look at him and the proof of that is when he returns home, this is spoilers, but he returns home eventually and he sees his mother after like a decade or two, right? And she still recognizes him, right? So it's like, so even after all of that happened,
yep,
she's able to see him for, oh, it's you. Of course it's you, right?
yeah,
And so that's how I would describe it. I think for me, like I feel like the transformation that I've gone through is very similar. I think I've always had a capacity for kindness and gentleness and wanting to make the world a better place. But it's like it was there were other things that overshadowed it over time or seemed more valuable or more interesting over time, and I just went down a different path,
yeah.
right?
And then what do you think got your path changed?
I think just that's
'Cause
a good question.
I have an idea, and I want to say it, but I'm trying to do the play here.
Yeah, I think resonating with Thorfinn so highly in season 2 in particular, and resonating with the idea of creating paradise on Earth from season 1, that this idea that carries over for season 2, I just like it just hit me on such a deep level that I started paying attention. So it wasn't just entertainment for me anymore. Like the first
Yeah,
season was kind of entertainment for the most part. I was like, okay, this is fun action, right? Game of Thrones type of action, whatever.
yeah,
But once it clicked with me, then I started identifying with the characters, and it's like I started like taking notes. I started journaling. I started reflecting every episode, and I think because of that, I was able to truly wrestle with the concepts as if I were in the story myself,
yeah.
right? And so,
And
yeah,
how much do you think just your experiences helped change and craft the different behavior. Like, did you experience something? It could be like emotions in a sensory sense of like
Yeah.
particular feelings, or some other experience that helped you give the understanding to change. I'm guessing, like, what little I know about Vinland Saga, he had a lot of like experiences that helped lead to his change, along with like some new information that he eventually was opened up to. So it's like, seems like a combination of experience and openness and like growth mindset, essentially, that those things is what helps cultivate the awareness and builds that. And once you get to that awareness, that's what Shan and Dave talk about, like one of their early live streams about like consciousness. Like once you have that consciousness awareness, the that kind of like ability built up, that's what gives you the ability, I would say, to change your direction and move in another
Yeah.
way. And that, like, it doesn't change you, but it does change you because you're still the same person. Like if we take that authentic self idea that I talked about last Thursday, where basically if you watched it after you left, I talked about the idea of like this meditation for ego, and basically you process things in terms of like, are they permanent or impermanent?
Yeah.
And basically you kind of get down to, you get asked the question of like, okay, what part of you is doing this exercise?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
it's like the part that's the what I call the quote unquote you, that's not your thoughts or emotions, what is observing the thoughts and emotions. And that
Yeah.
that's like the you that never changed. It's like the only thing that's permanent is that you were the you that you were yesterday, as you were when you were 5. Like you've always been you, and that's like the only permanent thing as you go through like that meditation. So it's like there's that aspect that hasn't changed, and then you are just still different though, because you got new information and new experiences and a new awareness.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what cultivates into that activity. And I don't know if you can process that in terms of your journey.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know what to do with the observing self because I feel like the observe. I mean, I've definitely thought about this quite a bit. I went through a phase of Eckhart Tolle, especially when I was younger, and like Eckhart Tolle, Alan Watts, like that whole movement, and like they're very big on the observing self as like this, like that's the real divine
Yeah,
you
it's
or
like
whatever.
the very Eastern idea and stuff that
Yeah,
I fell into. And then I saw a little bit of Alan Watts recently. I didn't really wasn't familiar with him, but I'm
yeah.
seeing the same ideas he was preaching.
So for me, I'm familiar with the idea. I have oh I fell away from the idea after. I mean, I was obsessed about it for a while, right? It's like,
Yeah.
but after it's like I find it's just a little bit too passive. It's like, okay, yes, you're an observing you, great, right? And yes, you need that level of detachment, as we've discussed, to not be so immersed in something that you're just blind and you're a slave to whatever
To your
drives.
default programming.
Exactly. So it has its use, but it's like I don't worship that thing. Like I don't
Yeah.
worship this observing self because if you
That's the
worship it
same.
too,
That's just another attachment.
well, yes, that too, but also it's just fundamentally a passive entity, right?
I
In
don't
my
know about that. I mean, it
right,
kind of is, but it's passive because it's opening up the option to make a choice. And
right,
that's why it feels passive, I think. And
right.
the action is something that that's when you have to like put in the work and utilize that state of mind, I'm thinking
Right.
is how it works.
That's the extent to which I find it useful. That right, what you just said, right? Anything
Yeah.
beyond that, where it's like, hey, that's the real you. I don't get into that argument of that's the real you versus not. I think it's a useful function you need, right?
Yeah.
So to answer your question about like um how this connects back to my experiences here, you know, it really started back in season one. I have my journal entries about it. I saved them and I sent them to a couple of people
How
in the
long ago
midst,
was that?
like less than 2 weeks ago. I'm telling you, this is like a very rapid development for me.
I see. I
So
get it now. I thought maybe you watched it a while ago, or like,
no, this is like, yeah, this happened this month. Like,
got you.
so, but yeah, I took a whole bunch of journal entries And so when I think back to the journal entries, this really started in season 1, where I was working with sleep processing. So really, I mean, I am grateful to OP because like OP made me want to reflect, period, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, hey, what can I reflect on? Okay, I'm watching this show, whatever, like whatever. I'll just journal about it because it's like it's one of those episodes, it's one of those shows where it's like it has two halves. Like, so it's like almost like Hunter x Hunter, right? So it's like
Yeah.
you have there's this pause. And so on the pauses, like I asked ChatGPT and it was like, okay, like if it has two halves, just stop it and journal for 5 minutes about what you saw, and
Yeah.
then play it again after, right? And then journal at the end, right? And so I started doing that. And around the end of season 1, that's where I started getting this connection of, oh, I don't exactly relate with Thorfinn at this point, like because I'm not driven by rage or revenge or anything like that, and I don't understand him completely, but I do relate to him by being a slave to my emotions. At that time, the emotion I was most enslaved to was boredom and apathy, right? I had intense boredom, right?
Yeah.
And like it's like I was like, man, this sucks. It's like I don't even know what to do with my time, right? You know, and it's like I was pouting like a little kid because I'm like this, like it's like what am I supposed to do with my life, basically? And I was
Yeah.
like, and my journal reflections were like, oh, this is very much like Thorfinn in the sense that you are also driven by this enslavement, and you will be basically dragged around by life until you figure this out. And so
Yeah.
once I made that connection, I was like, okay, if like what is Thorfinn going to do to solve this problem? And if the solution is compelling enough, then I will also try and do that in my own life. And
Yeah.
so it was very fascinating to me when season 2 came around and Thorfinn started experiencing the exact like boredom and apathy that I was experiencing. I was like, oh
Yeah.
shit. Like, all right, so now I gotta really pay attention, right? And so that's, I would say that is what, like that identification or that empathy with Thorfinn through the journaling and through the reflection was what led to it. And if I were binge watching this show like I think most people do with anime, I would not have made that connection. And I'm gonna be honest. I think that may be the difference. Like that may be the condition that saved me, so to speak.
What was the
Right?
condition again?
Like the condition of like stopping and reflecting after each
Yeah.
half of the
Okay.
episode instead of just playing it, right? Because if you just play it, it's like, okay, it washes over your head and then you go about your day and then you don't, it's
Pure
not really,
consume style. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I think that the reflection is what led to the depth of like it hitting me as hard as it did, you know? And I think that's honestly one of the things, that practice of journaling in between like show halves. I think that's something that I'm going to carry with me because I don't think I've ever done that before. And I think that I've missed a lot out of shows because I haven't reflected on them. Like One Piece, Hunter x Hunter. Like I feel like I've watched a lot of great shows, like Death Note. Um, but it's like I don't think I made it personal. I don't think I reflected on it. I don't think to your point, I don't think I detached myself enough to try and see it in a deeper way. Like I was just kind of immersed, right? So yeah. Oh, hello.
Oh, you can't hear me when I'm okay. Yeah, I heard all that. I was ask I went to my notepad so I could look at the first question because I was going to try to tie it to this, and I didn't know I couldn't talk during that. But
Hmm.
I was trying to say something off of what you just said of darn it. I forgot now. You were just saying about reflecting on things and taking the consume more seriously and learning lessons.
Hmm.
Ugh,
Yeah,
I lost it.
you might have to watch this back. It's fine. I don't know if I could give a TLDR. I was basically saying that.
I heard it all.
Oh, okay, all right. So then I won't repeat it.
Yeah, I just I was gonna ask a question based off of one of the last things you said, but I forgot that. So I guess I'll just move on to what I was trying to do, which is I wanted to try to tie this into the first question I asked, and I don't know how to read it while the chat is open.
Yeah,
So
I
if you
think I
want to
can.
read it, you can.
Yeah, I think I can get it. Let me
I don't know if you want to read names or not.
I'll make a judgment call on that. Give me a second.
Thank you, Double Decider.
So, all right. So the first question, right? The identity one.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the theme is like the theme was balancing our identities between self and others. Is one more important than the other? Yeah, I think the name's fine. Is one more important than the other? Was Hank right in the past conversation with Benjamin about the tribe in this aspect? And basically, Hank's argument was like like authenticity, like society kind of determines what's acceptable authenticity, right?
Yeah.
And if it's like he always makes this joke about like psychology and the DSM-5 where it's like if they don't approve of your behavior, you're considered crazy and then they try and like medicate you or get rid of you, right?
Oh,
Um
okay. That
so yeah,
makes more sense where he's coming from, I guess.
yeah, he always talks about that. And so and then yeah, revisit the Hunter conversation about like the chimera ants and the Hunter society being like their most authentic self,
Yeah.
and the value that comes from that. Um
So I wanted to tie it to what you were just talking about yourself and your processing,
yeah.
because basically I see it that in a sense we are building your identity through this processing and you're trying to make more conscious decisions. And how do we balance what you're trying to do with yourself and your life with the society? And if we could maybe play a hypothetical where your family or friends or whoever or was just super against what you're trying to do right now, like maybe talking to me, wasting your time processing this stuff,
Right.
and like just completely trying to demotivize this path you are currently on self discovery. Like, which one overpowers the other? And like, I
Yeah.
feel like the counter argument I already thought of for like hit break down his whole idea is like martyrdom, just the concept of martyrdom and like the meaning that those people find and why they push things so far to become a martyr feels like it breaks down his whole idea of
Right.
the tribe just wins no matter what, bro.
It depends, right? Like I like to play devil's advocate, there are plenty of martyrs that are not remembered and that have not had no impact, right?
Yes, but if we're talking about like their specific meaning and
Oh, sure. Yeah,
that,
yeah,
then it's like who
sure.
cares in a way?
Right,
And
right,
that's
right.
kind of what ties back to the Chimera Ant arc thing because it's like even though like the ants kind of died in the end when they became more conscious and chose their own paths, even though they like died because of the rose bomb thing, it's
Mhm.
like they still were like super content and happy and like had a lot of meaning, even though like they're dying.
Yeah. Yeah. Um so you wanted to connect this back to what I'm doing. I think that well, I mean it's a dialogue, right? Because like I was thinking about this as well. Vinland Saga was made by someone else, right?
Yeah,
This is I don't want to call it society, but it's
yeah,
definitely
exactly.
someone else
Yep.
that's providing this conversation with me in my own life, and I'm engaging in that. And
Yeah,
so I think there is still a balancing act that's being had, right? Because it's like, yeah, it's like, you know, isn't it? Yeah, I'm not thinking about these things in a vacuum.
yeah,
And
and that's
oh,
at
sorry,
least
hello.
hello.
Yeah, you cut off for two like 1 second, but go ahead.
It's okay. I was saying like I think that this whole double deciding thing right here is just so important, and
Mhm.
I kind of forgot where I was gonna go with it. But I mean, I think it's like what you're going into is like a big problem for deciders like me
Mhm.
because it's like, of course, I would love to go like all on the Chimera Ant arc idea of
Right.
just do what you do, bro. Just get what you want, and like who cares in a way.
Right, because
And
it'll work
like,
itself out. Yeah.
and then there's like the other side of Hank where he's just like tribe stuff, man. Like, I, I'm confident, you're not confident, and like all that like extremes, and here you are is like, I have my perspective, I have this path I want to follow, and it's meaningful to me to process, but like it's in it's like congruent, or I don't think that's the right word. It's like in parallel with like these other people that you're like bouncing
Oh
off
yeah,
of.
yeah,
And it's like building an identity that is acceptable to you and others in the world. It's like seems like the right way to do it, and is that double
yeah,
deciding balance and like building an identity off of that. And it's like when he like hears me say authentic self, he doesn't seem to be able to differentiate like the extremes of like the thought and emotions, like animalistic
yeah,
parasite kind of people, versus like people that are just trying to like choose the best path based that's like seems best for them based off of the current information they have and their current experiences.
yeah,
And it's like kind of interesting because like how I handle the authentic self thing really does put more emphasis on like you need to find yourself and screw everyone else, kind of like Julian himself talks about as well. It's just like really pushes people in that direction. But it's just like when Benjamin was critiquing the idea of like me using authentic self, he wanted to replace it. Like he was trying to say that that doesn't like encapsulate a complete person. So
mm,
my friend was coming up with a term called like vessel self. I don't know if I'm settled on that one, but I don't have a better SI term for that. But it's
mm,
just like the complete you is like a perfect balance between like that core you and like what you want to head, what direction you want to head towards. That's also like has some kind of alignment with other people.
yeah.
It's like deep and hard to talk about. And if I wanted to relate that to like the Chimera Ant arc stuff, I guess I would say like that's the reason why one side won versus the other is like
Oh yeah.
what kind of went more in parallel towards the greater good. I don't know.
Well, I mean, one was more balanced, right? Like, so even like this idea of like the like human version of like the humanity versus chimera ants. So like the two different types of DI, let's say, right?
Yeah.
This was embodied by Netero versus the king, right? And so the king, even if he had the greater good in mind, he was still doing his thing. Like he wasn't really answering to anyone else ever,
Yeah.
right?
But so
Netero,
was Netero. Gosh,
no,
that's a
no, but the
really
thing is,
weird one to think about.
Netero, I mean, yes, he was fighting, but it's like you have to think about how he won. He won because of all of humanity helped him out in a horrific way, right? Because it's like they basically helped him place a bomb in his chest as a contingency, right? But it's
Yeah.
like he won because of other people, right?
Yeah, but
And I think
it's weird for me to process because like I almost see that battle as Netero being the more animalistic,
no, yeah,
like
no, that's true. No,
unconscious. That's so weird.
yeah, no, that's exactly right. Like, and like so one of the ways you can tell that is like when Netero dies, he has ant eyes, like they're pitch black,
Oh,
right?
I remember like that part of it, but I also just know like from what I've like consumed on his character, his whole goal in life and the whole reason why he did everything he did was like just to fight the strongest person like
Oh yeah,
possible and push himself. It's like so flex. It was like goofy,
oh yeah.
but I respect it. And it's like I don't know, maybe that kind of does defeat like the point I'm getting at. I mean, like maybe this is like a point for Hank, as in like, yeah, the tribe won in the end, bro.
Yeah.
But it's like, man, that's hard to process. But it's I
It's
feel like I
like
lost.
with Netero, like so here's the thing with Netero and the king, it's like the king, like you said, it's like there was an inversion that happened because the king was the
There
most
was
human like
at the end.
at the end, especially, right?
Yeah,
And I think that Netero and like you could even see it on the human side, like Netero gone, like Kilo was an exception, but Netero and Gone,
yeah,
I'd say those two,
yeah. They went super like
they just yeah,
unconscious.
they did. But like even while they did, they had other people in mind, right? So
Mm,
Gon had Kite in mind,
yeah,
and Netero had basically all of humanity, basically in
yeah,
mind, right? And I think that that's that dialogue that's going on, right? It's like there's a dialogue that happens, and I do think this is to Hank's point. It's like there is like just like it's like you have to do things for the betterment of something, right? It's like you have to try and
Yeah,
make things better, and
but
I
you
think
have to have the personal meaning as well, which is of course
as
the
well.
perspective I'm coming from.
Yeah, exactly. You need both, and I think the humans found a way to get both, and that's why
So
they won.
what was the side of like the authentic self that they had?
I mean, they were still doing their DI at the end of the day. I mean, Gon was incredibly selfish,
Yeah, but
incredibly
I feel like
selfish.
that's like going off of the thoughts versus thoughts and emotions
Oh
instead
yeah,
of
no,
the
he was completely like impulse mind. So in our conversation, he's not the authentic self, right?
yeah,
It
that's
would
what
be
I'm getting at. So
so
I'm
so
wondering
that's
who on the
fine.
human side is that?
I think the human side, it was like Killua, and
Yeah.
I think even Netero, honestly, because even when he was doing his like even when he was fully immersed, like he was
Okay.
completely having fun. But it's like
Yeah,
even while he was having fun, he did it knowing that like whether I win or lose, it's like the people
I'm
that
satisfied.
I'm not only am I satisfied for myself, but the people that I'm trying to protect are going to be okay.
Yeah, there we
Right?
go. That's the connection I'm missing.
Yeah.
I forgot to like see that part of him because he
Yeah.
is so intense.
Yeah, he Netero had both, and then Killua, like I think Killua arguably was like, I mean, I think even the imagery, like Killua was the light, right? He's light,
Yeah,
right? So he was the most enlightened of all of these people,
yeah,
arguably,
I would say
right?
so.
And so he like with Killua, it's like his trajectory is like he was so concerned about the well-being, like he was thinking like it's like he was concerned about the well-being of Gon, he was concerned about the well-being of the ants, even because he had ant friends.
Yeah,
It's like he was the one that's like I think he was probably the most like I'm concerned about my drive, like for I would say his drive was for friendship. He's a very lonely character.
yeah,
And he found that friendship like with the outside world. I mean, that's the most pure sense,
yeah, and it
right?
didn't like control him. It was like
Yeah.
more of a conscious decision of like, yes, I value this, so I'm gonna take these actions.
Yeah, exactly.
Dang, I wonder how things would have been different if like the king somehow like had his change of character earlier, or like just like imagine if like
Yeah.
things could have worked out between everyone.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's hard to imagine, but um yeah. All right, so look, I think I got to start wrapping up, but
Yeah,
I
I
do
think we're
think
at a good stopping place.
yeah, I think that so there's a few things. I think number one, I would love to have a conversation with you again because I mean we didn't even cover everything.
No.
So you know I'll text you about that.
Yeah.
In terms of this video, I do think I'm gonna post it as like a podcast. I have been thinking about that. Like I do want to have more conversations with people, but I don't want to do interviews. I don't like interviews.
Yeah.
Like
I
I
feel
like
that.
conversations. So I do think I'm gonna post this today.
Just make
Um
sure to mention Vinland Saga spoilers and maybe Hunter x Hunter spoilers.
oh Jesus Christ, yeah, no, that's right. Um okay, so then I guess my question for you is, I mean, are you good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then what's your type again?
Uh Double feminine, Tine,
Mhm.
consume, sleep, blast, and play last.
Do you know your socials?
I believe I'm a number 4.
Number four, question
I
mark.
had a small conversation with Dave, and he said 3 or 4 seems fine.
3 or 4. Okay, cool. All right, so 3 or 4. All right. So I'm just gonna go ahead and upload that and post it today. So I'll text you, and we'll try and set up another conversation. I don't think we necessarily like. It's up to you whether we want to do another filmed version, but this was fun. I think this is really
Yeah,
really meaningful.
I'm here for it. I feel like it's stretching me and giving me some confidence since like getting on live stream stuff like last week was like super stressful and
Okay.
like thinking about it ahead of time. But like I'm feeling my way around it, and after surviving the first time, I feel more open to making mistakes and like know the tribe's not going to kill me off IP wise. It's
Yeah.
fine. I'm happy to be here, and I can make myself available fairly easy. So I look forward to the next time.
Nice. All right. Cool. thank you so much. I'll text you on Discord right now, but I do got to go. So take care and have a great day.
Yep, you too. Bye.